everything should be made as simple as possible. That's what Albert Einstein thought. I'm here in Fiji right now, and when you're here, you think of nature a lot. And I always think of nature because I believe that the answers are always around us, and humans are part of nature. And there are natural laws of nature that apply to everyone that lives in this world. A simple one is, if you look here, we have the ocean. The tide comes in, the tide goes out. And then think of what else is like that. The sun goes up, the sun goes down. When you look at someone's lab work, at certain times of the day, hormones go up, and other times of the day, your hormones go down. Like when you first wake up, your cortisol levels, the stress hormone that has such a bad reputation. If you didn't have it, you would die. But it's high in the morning because it makes you alert. It's what wakes you up. When that's low in the morning, you're in trouble. You're gonna feel like hell. You're not gonna be able to get out of bed, actually. And so, at the end of the day, that needs to be low so you can fall into deep restorative sleep. But these are the principles that we are part of. And as humans, as the dominant species, we often believe that we're not part of nature, but we should preserve it. Well, when we preserve nature, we preserve ourselves. But there are principles here. There is power here. Look at the power of the ocean. No one can harness that. That is beyond. If a tsunami came, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to get the hell out of here. But I want to do this video because for, just you guys, my clients, the people that are really in it to win it. Because I think we make things too complicated. Like Leonardo da Vinci said, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And if you ever read the biography, the newest one of Leonardo da Vinci, you'd be like, man, this guy is a freaking genius. And he would go into nature, as almost every great scientist has ever done, and just observe it. Like if I look right here, you can see that all these little crabs, I don't know if you can see that or not, but all these little crabs are eating this seed, this nut that fell from a tree. It was found in these things here, and they use their little pinchers to claw it up, and that's what they're doing. But they're all working together in harmony. They're not trying to kick each other's ass. Well, maybe these ones are, but you see what I mean? Look how many there are. Isn't that crazy? Like there is a natural collaboration, a cohesiveness, a flow to nature, and by extension to life as a whole. Look at this thing moving. Look at all these down here. I'm gonna lift it up. You ready? Hey, look at that. You were lifting that whole thing. That's incredible. All right, sorry, coming back. All right, we'll leave them alone right now. But I'm like a child out here. Let's go back here. But the purpose of this video is to make life easier for you, because life was not meant to be a struggle. Life was not meant to be complicated. Because we need to look for the laws of nature and then work with those laws, because resistance is the things that create suffering. So what I mean by that is, if you're like, when you get mad at someone, like a human thing, right? What do humans do? Like, oh, he said this, she said this. And they go around and tell everyone, but they don't talk to the person that's actually involved. And then they start to build up this resentment. And the story has expanded because other people added their version on top of it, right? They're saying, yeah, Susie should have done that. Bob should have done that. They're dickheads. Dickheads, it's a great word. But these are the things. We need to get out of that. And the way we get out of it is that we start to develop a belief that life is simple when we work with it. And when we work against it, when we resist, it's a struggle, because that's the truth. That's a law of nature. And so when it comes to training, well, this is a principle. So you are all great at something, whether it's being a parent or you run a company, but whatever industry you're in, whatever thing you spend most time on, you're awesome at it. If you're watching this, you're one of those people. So you'll totally get this. Now, if I just put this out in the world, it would not get much traction. People would be like, what are you talking about? Because people do not think. But when someone devotes themselves to a certain path to become great at it, to become a master of something, what you find is the first stage is you don't really know anything. You're trying to prove yourself. And when that occurs, everything is very complicated. Like when I first started as a trainer, I was very young. I was the youngest person because I started as a trainer. I got certified when I was in high school, and I became a strength and conditioning coach when I was 18. By the time I was 23, I won the world's best personal trainer contest. And I won it again the next year, every category. I'm not saying to brag, but what I'm saying is these stages were accelerated for me because I knew what I was going to do when I was like 4. So it wasn't that I just started then. I started when I was 4, not when I was 16 when I got certified. Because of who my dad was, my environment. Like, my dad never got me toys. He only got me things that made me better physically, mentally, emotionally, that sharpened me. And that may sound sad, but I loved it. And so by the time I was 13, I had a choice. I grew up in a trailer, so we didn't have a lot of money. So I had just a little room, and I could either have a bed or a weight bench. So I slept on a weight bench for 3 years. It was a no-brainer to me. And my parents were just like, hey, do whatever you want. You know, they just assumed that I would want to bed after a few nights, but I never did. For 3 years, I did that. And then I started understanding the importance of sleep. And then I was like, okay, I need a bed. I need to do something here, at least something in the corner. And so what you find, though, this first stage of anything, like as you are learning about how to get traction and gain mastery over your physical body, you realize that there's more to it. What else is there? Well, there's the physical training aspect. And that there's so many different exercises. But when you get to my level, where you looked at it so deeply, so longly, and you looked at the patterns, there's really only 8 exercises. There's 8 movements, and there's all these variations of these 8 movements. That's it. And I'm going to teach you those over the next couple of months, which would be cool if you're interested, of course. And then the other part is nutrition. Now, there is tons of misinformation when it comes to nutrition, but there's certain principles, like eat foods closest to the natural source. Like, humans mess things up because in like good intention, like trying to make foods last longer. Now, some people are doing it to maximize profit, which is fine too, because that makes things happen. It depends on if you're a generous steward of God's energy, of money. And so, but when it comes to nutrition, it's like, if it's from a tree, if it's just naturally here, if it's an animal, it's a fish, and it hasn't been, if it sits on a counter and doesn't decompose like within a week, and you can still eat it, then I don't think there's a lot in there that's good for you. But the other side of that is, there have been people that have been cast out to sea by accident, living on a raft for 70, 80 days at a time. And I always look up these stories because I'm amazed, because they're like scientific experiments that you can't do anywhere else because it's illegal. And what you find is, there was a guy in the Dominican Republic that floated out to sea by accident. He fell asleep on his little raft when he was knocking the barnacles off a boat, which was his job. He was very poor. And he had packets of like condiments, like ketchup in his pocket. And he survived on that for 70-something days. Like, think about that. The human body is incredible. We overcomplicate it. Like, the human body is going to figure stuff out. Like, it learns how to survive 80 years in North America. On average, like 79 years is the average lifespan. And people don't exercise. They drink alcohol. They abuse themselves. They're in negative emotional states. When you're in fear-based emotional states, your body actually breaks down faster than when you're in love-based emotional states. That's a fact. It's easily found. If you're interested in learning more about that, you can look at the work of Dr. Robert Sapolsky at Stanford. And if you're interested, just send me a message and I'll send you a video so you can watch it, so you don't have to search through the thousands of things on the internet, or millions, or whatever it is. But nutrition, that's it. There's some principles that apply to nutrition. There's principles apply to physical training. And then the big one is mental conditioning. If you can't control your thoughts, what you place your attention on, you're in big trouble, because it's going to be taken from you. And that's what's happened in the world with social media. And it's designed to take your attention. And then they're gathering data and they're using that, and they're going to sell you some dumb shit. But this is the fact. There's nothing good or bad about it. We're in an environment, and it's like a game, like an adventurous game, and you got to decide, what do you want to create here? These are the challenges. These are obstacles. What are my spiritual currency? Well, my spiritual currency, my ultimate resources, are very simple. It is my attention, because what you place your attention on expands, it grows, it strengthens. If you say, hey, I have this goal, I'm going to create this thing, I'm going to build this business that serves the world in this way, and you just keep putting thought in that, then you're going to start getting ideas, you're going to start noticing things, you're going to see patterns, and you're going to say, like, man, that's a problem. This is where people really complain on. This is where people are being misled. This is where people are being harmed. This is where they're being lied to. And then what do is then you start saying, how can I help those people? How can I correct that situation? And eventually it just starts to come to you. You start to connect to that information, that stream of consciousness that's giving you ideas, and we all have access to it. But if you can't control your attention, someone's taking your attention, and they're trying to sell you some stuff for their benefit, and probably not for yours, because it's okay to lie now in marketing. Everyone lies. Like if you look at diet books, lose 30 pounds, 30 days. It's not true. And if you did lose 30 pounds in 30 days, you're not keeping it off. There's no way. Well, you know this by now. How many times are we going to fall for the same things? It's quick, fast, and easy. It works like magic. It's not true. It's just 100% not true. And if it was true, no one would value it, because what is valued are things that require you to go through adversity. Challenge creates change. And like, if you look through, like, I've been all over the world many, many times, and I've been like in little villages and tribes and like big, huge cities. And what you find is there's things that are universally respected by all humans anywhere, no matter what. Love is the first one. Love conquers all by far, is the most powerful force, and we should strive to live in love-based emotions as often as we can. Not all the time, because then you wouldn't know. You need a contrast. You got to know what, like, you got to feel fear in order to really feel love, because fear is the absence of love. That's all that is. I don't want to go too deep down that, because you guys, we've talked about this before, and it's a lifetime of work. But the point is, your attention is your number one spiritual currency. And then your time. Your time is, how much attention can I have? I can have full attention for how much time I live, right? That's it. So, and then the third thing is your emotion. We can call that your energy. So your emotional state. So how much time do you have when you're in love-based emotion? It seems timeless, right? If you love doing something, then you can do it all day and you don't get tired, because energy is emotion. Emotion is energy. So if you're in love-based emotion, you are actually, this is a real thing, you generate energy. When you're in fear-based emotion, you are wasting energy. You are destroying energy. When you're in love-based emotion and gratitude, appreciation, determination, courage, whatever it is, any love-based emotion, it creates energy. That's why it's so it's so important to master. Not easy, but it's important. And if you say like, hey, these are my resources. One, my emotional state. I need to own that. Two, my attention. Where am I placing my attention? That requires to have a high level of self-awareness. And then you have to have a high level of self-honesty, because our brains make up stories to make us look good. And the ego gets in there and says, nah, it's not my fault, it's that fault. Oh, it's the weather, it's this, it's that. That's all bullshit. Those are all lies and stories of limitation that we allow. So the stories we tell and believe control our emotions, our emotional state. So what else does? The way you carry yourself. So if you want to master your emotional state, you got to, the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you move. I started by training a lot of professional athletes, and I still have a bunch of them. But I make their programs and stuff, and I don't really even talk to them about that stuff, because it's enacting the plan, that's the challenging part. So my part is almost like as a consultant, as a friend, and I remind them of these things. And one of the visualizations they have is I'm 10 feet tall. And so if you were 10 feet tall, what would the world be like? What would you be afraid of? Probably nothing, right? Maybe someone 12 feet tall. But this was a visualization from Dr. Maxwell Maltz, and I heard it, and I was on a call with a client, a guy that was going to a fight, and this is a guy that beat him before, and he didn't have the confidence. He kept replaying the story in his head of how he was defeated, how everything he tried didn't work. The guy was faster and stronger. On that night he was. That's what I told him. I was like, are there days when you're faster and there's days when you're slower? He's like, yeah. Are there days where you feel stronger and days where you feel weaker? He's like, yeah. I was like, on that day, what were you feeling? He goes, well, I felt weak and slow. And I said, right. What about today? He's like, well, I feel faster than that day. And I was like, and all the training you did. And so we started to create a new story. We're crafting a story. I'm telling you this because this is what we need to do. We all need to do. So I have to do this for myself. You need to do this for you. And this is a skill set. It's not something you're born with. It's a thing you master. It's like a martial art of life. And that's the beauty of this, because it's not easy. And because there's adversity, it's challenging, and it's constant, and it never ends, it's valuable, it's fun, and it works. And so the three things to master emotions, and this is what we'll finish with today, is the way you carry yourself. You're 10 feet tall, walking everywhere. You got love in your heart. You're led by your heart. You're absolutely fearless. That's the first thing. The way you talk, the way you move, the way you speak, everything you do is vibrating, and you want to see yourself and all others through the eyes of God. And I say that no matter what your beliefs are, it's the eyes of unconditional love, divine love, not like this nonsense Disney romance horse shit. That's just a lie. Someone wrote that, and it's not true. That's like dating, I think. I don't know what it is, but it's not real. Like there's another level of love where no matter what someone does, you know who they really are at their core. Now that doesn't mean someone who is like a psychopath and making really bad choices that you need to like just allow them to step all over you. No, you're strong. You know who you are, and you say no to things. That's part of it. So that's the first thing. The way you carry yourself, the way you move. Walk around like you're 10 foot tall with a giant heart, right? And then the second thing is your attention. what are you focused on right now? Are you feeling funky? You feeling a little negative energy? Then what do? Well, you ask yourself, what am I focused on right now? Am I focused on what's good or what's not so good? What could go wrong or what could go right? That doesn't mean you're just a positive thinking, optimistic person and you get taken advantage of. No, it just means that, hey, I see things as I want them to be, as I desire them to be. And I also see these are some of the challenges that could arise. And I welcome those challenges. If they do occur, this is my plan. Wow, look at all these crabs. Isn't that crazy? Just like a coconut full of crabs. Beep. Sorry, couldn't help myself. So the way you carry yourself, number 1. 2, your attention. 3rd, the stories you tell and believe. These are so important. What do I mean by that? These are your beliefs. But we, as humans, we learn through stories, symbols and stories. That's how history has been passed down. So what we got to do is become hyper aware, not in a bad way, but in a way where you're owning everything. You are taking full responsibility. Like, hey, everything I create in my life is coming through the filter of me, through my beliefs, the stories I tell, the way I carry myself. My emotional states are the filter. And so if I'm feeling grateful and appreciative, strong and confident with certainty, and something happens, that's a lot different if you're feeling selfish and angry and resentful, right? Those are 2 different worlds, 2 different results. One, you see the opportunity in everything and you can turn anything into gold. The other, you become a victim. And so probably the best story ever. I'll never forget this moment. It's like it's just happened when I first moved to Florida, like in 2003. Someone at the gym, I was trying to network, because I didn't know anybody. And I was a part owner in this business. I was a giant gym. And I was like, I got to do this networking thing. And if you know me, I am not social. Like I like solitude. I like being by myself. And as you can see. And so I got invited by this guy at the gym. And he had a convertible. He was like this big jack dude. He had a shaved head. And he was talking about, he saw me train. He's like, oh, do you do martial arts? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, you should check out this class. You got to be invited to it. And I was like, okay. I was like, that's weird. And it's at a warehouse. He goes, I'll meet you here at the gym. And then we'll go. And I was like, all right, well, where's it at? And he goes, oh, it's in a warehouse. And we get there, there's no sign anywhere. And I'm like, I met this stranger, this giant dude with head shape. We're in this fancy convertible. It was just really awkward. I'm like, man, if this guy tries to kill me. I'm like, I'm gonna have to kill this guy? What? These are things that go through men's head, by the way. So ladies, crazy, right? But what happened was we get there and this guy with his thick Israeli accent comes in. He's an Israeli commander. I didn't know at the time. But we're very good friends to this day. And he goes, so never forget. He comes up and he's like, line up, motherfuckers. It's literally how he talks. That's like a direct impersonation perfectly. He goes, line up, motherfuckers. And he has his hips jetted out, hands on hips, just like a cartoon character that you don't want to mess with. And he goes, in life, in any encounter, there is a victim and there's an attacker. You decide. And that hit me like a soul punch. Because at the time in my life, I was, I was like 25, I think. And I blamed a lot of people. And I wasn't owning everything. Like today it's different, right? But at that stage of life, I think everyone goes through that. I like to think that because then I feel better about myself. But that statement was like, wow, no matter what happens, and say someone attacks you and something's just crazy, you weren't expecting, you didn't do anything to provoke it, just happens. Your attitude, your emotional state, your identity, the stories you tell and believe becomes a thing. Because if you're walking around like you're 10 foot tall, I'm sorry, no one's gonna mess with you. There is an energy, a field around you, a biofield it's called, it's measurable, that people experience and they can feel. Most people are unaware of it, but they're just you meet someone, you're like, oh, that person's great. And they just walk in the room, you don't even know why. Other people walk in, they just drain the room. And it has to do with their emotional state. They're not good people or bad people. We're all the same on a soul level. But I want you to know that story because I hope it's something you remember. Because every day when things don't go your way, there's a gift there. There's an opportunity. The good Lord said, hey, you're strong enough to handle this. Otherwise, it wouldn't show up in front of you. And these are the beliefs, the stories you want to tell. And I'm not going to tell you what stories I actually did. I'm going to share some to give you examples. But ultimately, you want to craft your story of who you really are. That is, the way I like to look at it is like every comic book, every superhero has this story. Doesn't matter which one it is, where they were living in fear some way. Like Spider-Man, Peter Parker, is this dorky kid. And then like his family got murdered by the bad people. And then he gets bit by a radioactive spider and he has superhuman abilities. And now he's his best self. This is the story of the lion and the lamb, again and again. This is the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell, which is how we communicate as humans. But your story, if you're not doing it yourself, is being written by others. And that's something that we have to give permission to. Someone can't just write our story for us because we are in command of that. We're at the driver's seat, but often we give it away. So what's the process for this? Lion, Lion. The first step, anytime you feel funky, you want to have a high level awareness first, because if you're not aware of things, you don't know what to do, right? You're not even aware. You start telling stories and why it's someone else's fault. It's the weather, it's whatever, right? So the first thing is to create a state of love-based emotion. That's the L in the acronym. So create a state of love-based emotion. You know how to do it. Move, go for a walk, exercise, train. That's why we train in the morning. Put yourself in this state and then create your day when you're laying in static back. This is all intentional. There's nothing in your program that is not by design. I just don't add things. It doesn't make any sense because one of your most important resources is your time. So it is time efficient. It works 100% of the time when you do it. That's it. It's just a science. The art of living it is what you're learning here with this acronym. So create a state of love-based emotion. Find appreciation. Appreciation, gratitude is that bridge from fear to love. That's the way. And you can find, if you have a body that works, that's all that I think you need. Like I have a friend with no arms and legs. I'll do a video with him soon because it's just incredible. He can swim. He can do everything. It doesn't make any sense. So, but I'll tell you more about him later. But what's the I? So you got love-based emotion. Then the I is identify and imagine your desired outcome as if it's already happened the way you want it. Because what that does, that creates the feeling tone, the emotional state. And that emotional state will allow you to see things accurately, because that emotional state, your beliefs, the stories you tell and believe, creates that emotional state, and then you see things either accurately or inaccurately based off that. So if you're in fear, you're not seeing what's really there. You have a distorted view of it. It's a false view. It's an illusion. It's very important to know. So you want to identify and imagine. And this is a skill. It won't be easy at first if you don't usually do this. But after a while of doing this, if you just say, hey, this month, this is all I'm doing. This is just my thing. I'm going to live this line. This is the way of the line. Love-based emotion, identify, imagine my desired outcome as if it's already happened. You're just basking in that feeling of what it's like. You want to bask in victory. So if you ever see, like some of the clients that are long-time clients, they'll just put victory, right? Because that's the thing we talked about a long time ago. But everything is a victory when you look it through the lens of love. That's the way. And so we want to create that state. We want to identify and imagine. Then, this is important, because what's going to happen is the ego is going to kick in. The fear-based you, the learned you, the little kid inside you that's afraid of things, that doesn't know that it can take care of itself yet, will pop up and say, yeah, but. And it will start to tell a story of why you can't do it. So the O is obliterate every story of limitation. Every story of limitation you must obliterate. Because we are creating our reality as we go through these things we're talking about today. So obliterate, but you can't have zero tolerance for it. One thing I think me and Tony are such great friends is that when someone starts talking nonsense about limitation, like, we can't do that, we can't do it, it's like we both get angry, but not like at the person, just like, how dare you? That's like a slap in the face of the creator to say we can't do something. It's like, maybe it's an exaggeration, but it works for us. And so what's after that? The last thing is the N. Now is always the point of power. Presence is always the point of power. What does that mean? That means you got to move that energy. You need to move it from here to the next step towards where you want to be. But if you haven't made it clear what your desired outcome is, you can't move towards it. Does that make sense? Of course it does. I wouldn't say it otherwise, right? But anyway, that's going to be it for today. I want you to watch this as many times as you can, write down a few things, and decide what's your action, then take an action. So let's put this to use right now. So after you do it, put yourself in a love-based emotion state, identify, imagine what you want to happen today. Maybe you haven't trained yet. Say, I'm going to train, but I'm going to train in this state. I'm going to be in a joyful, determined state with absolute presence. I'm going to push myself, I'm going to challenge myself, and I'm going to love that shit every moment, and I'm going to affirm that entire time that I'm getting better with every rep, every breath. And challenge creates change, because as you do difficult things, you are in a state where you can program yourself to a greater degree than through normal life. The way you program yourself is doing all this stuff. It's repetition and emotion. So look at the news. They create a story, and a lot of times they'll have editorial, so it's just an opinion, right? And so when they'll say something that just makes somebody they're just outraged. Right? They're disgusted. And then, so you have a fear-based emotion, a strong fear-based emotion. And then they repeat it again and again and again. So they're putting you in state because you're not commanding your state. And then they're telling you more information. They keep repeating it. Like, why do they have to say it so many times? Because it's programming. Because if you put someone in fear, they'll keep watching. If you put someone in fear, they're easy to influence and manipulate and control. That's why you got to take command of your mind, of your attention, and be absolutely present. And then if you just do these things we talked about in this video, I'm telling you, well, you're already awesome. You're already doing great. But there's another level. And it's not like I'm number one. It's like, no, life doesn't need to be a struggle. Life is when you're in the flow, when you're aligned, when you're in love-based emotion, and you have a clear vision, like you've done your North Star process and stuff, and you're clear, you have that clarity, you're pulled forward. It's not something you have to fight against. That's why it's so important to do these things. All right, I got a little carried away. I wasn't planning on doing this. I gotta get to work.